So there's a big controversy around DMZ in the PvE, in the PvP community, particularly on not having PvE, and it's kind of like a big drama talking point. And JGOD is going to talk about this, and I kind of want to hear his opinion on this, because it's kind of like split in between communities. It's kind of like similar to Arc Raiders in a way, and I'm very curious to see where this is going to go.
Drama around the new DMZ mode not having a PvE dedicated mode, but it's also brought up a lot of discussion around the topic and whether or not the mode needs it or not. I personally think it could benefit from a PvE mode, but I'll explain kind of how that part works, because other games have tried this and it works very well in Tarkov. We'll talk a little bit about how that part works of it. Some of the common concerns are if it'll split the player base, it removes the tension, it defeats the purpose of an extraction shooter, everyone will just farm loot safely and nobody will play the real mode anymore, which I'll go ahead and address each of those points. It's not whether or matter or not DMZ should have a PvE mode. I think it definitely should, but
I do agree. I think the PvE mode should be a mode, but there should be restrictions. There should be gear and loot that are not attainable in PvE, unlike in PvP. I think there should be less amount of loot that you could grab in game, and there should be a less amount of loot pool in those, and also restrictions to certain loot that you just can't get in PvE, but you can get in PvP. I think that's the only way you can justify doing the mode, where PvP does not, because there is meta guys out there in every game. It doesn't matter. People are going to choose the PvE mode over the PvP mode if it has the same amount of loot pool. There's no point of actually doing it. If you want to chill and do that, that's fine. But at the end of the day, if you have all this loot and you go ahead and go into PvP and you use the guns that you got from PvE and they're about as good as the guns in the actual PvP mode that you get from, it becomes a point of, why does it matter to go in PvP? Unless if I want to get loot, I'm not going to get loot in PvP. I'm just going to go grab the stuff from PvE and just go into PvP if I want to fight people. And if I just want to play PvE all the time, a lot of the loot and everything of that nature, it becomes less rare and it's kind of a stagnant between the two. And it kind of gives off the same thing in Arc Raiders. If you're a solo player and you don't kill anybody, you have these lobbies where pretty much everybody's doing the same thing, getting all that stuff done and everything of that nature, which is cool and everything, right? And then it becomes to a point is when you actually go into PvP lobbies and everything of that nature, it starts to turn into, I can just go ahead and just chill, go solo, and I'm just going to go grab all this stuff and go. And there's no risk or reward of that in extraction shooter. Extraction shooter should be a point of, there's a risk to everything, and it shouldn't be a point where at some point PvE turns into this mode where I can grab all the gear and there's no risk to it and I can go in PvP and have a good time. And the people that are restrictedly enjoying paying PvP and getting loot from there, it just seems very unfair from that perspective.
Real question is more, can they have a PvE mode without harming the PvE mode? True. And that's the bigger part that I think a lot of people get mixed up on. I think one of the foundational things about an extraction shooter is that PvP is definitely an essential component of an extraction shooter.
Facts.
And it definitely needs to be there. But I also think that if DMZ isn't fun without the PvP, that also creates another problem. I think they've already kind of solved for this. I think other extraction shooters really do struggle with this, and PvP ends up being like the blanket that's going to fix all the different engaging issues, and the emergent gameplay is going to be enough.
Yeah, I do agree. PvE should be as good as the PvP. And if it's a blanket and hiding how bad PvE is in DMZ, it becomes a point of an actual issue on why they're not doing a PvE mode as well, is because the PvE ain't as fun as the PvP, and the PvP is blanketing the PvE side of things, if that makes any sense. And I see the points where he's making there, and I can understand when it comes down to it and they do PvP, they're showing the bounty system and everything like that. Everything a part of the PvP side of DMZ sounds very intriguing, and what they've added, the bounty system especially, and leadership around the bounty systems, gives a very big incentive in the PvP side. But what is there to do? Even if you're PvP, there's also going to be AI and PvE elements in DMZ. So is it going to be challenging? Like, areas are they going to be repeatable? Are they going to be fun to do? That is going to be the question. And if that's not, it's like a blanket, PvP's blanking the PvE issues in DMZ.
Reality for me is that if you remove the PvP, which leads to emergent gameplay, not that they should, but in general, the PvE has to be enough to stand on its own. And
Facts.
Then the PvP
Yeah, sure.
just adds to a little bit more exciting elements to it, a little bit more uncertainty to the mode, the ability for betrayal to happen, or maybe you make a truce and you turn on them. The game's still got to stand on its own two legs. So
Facts.
the looting should be good. The progression systems should be good. The missions should be good. The overall bosses, exploration, the certain amount of risk
100%.
versus reward. How good is the AI? If they're trash AI, well, then the game's not good enough. I'm gonna be honest. It's not. It needs.
Yeah, the 100%. Like, I think the AI needs to be challenging. I think if you're going to go into areas, the PvE should be, in my opinion, actually challenging. If we go into these boss rooms in areas where there's juggernauts, it should be challenging for a player to actually go in and try to get the loot. It shouldn't be like, oh my god, I'm just gonna grab these real quick. I'm gonna move around. I can solo it by myself. It should be capable of doing it solo if you're a good enough player, but at the same time, it should have enough players to where, it's gonna take 2 or 3 peoples to clear these rooms and get the stuff that we need and not die. Stuff like that. I mean, that's what I mean.
Very rewarding, even without those elements. The resource management, how does that system interact? And PvP should be an amplifier of the base game, not replace them. And normally I would have been all of the mindset that your game cannot have a PvE mode and survive, but Tarkov has kind of proven this wrong. And I think not enough players, because it is a little bit more of a niche game that is played by a lot of people, but maybe people don't know the nuance of the modes to really understand what they're offering versus what people think of PvE when they think of it. From this, it has separate progression, separate inventory, separate stash, separate economy, no progression crossover. And for a lot of people, it also has no wipes, which sometimes as part of the mode, wipe fatigue can be a thing, especially if you play ARPGs like Diablo or Path of Exile. That fatigue can set in.
Yeah.
And you could have some issues related with that. And then the mode, even though it doesn't have PvP like other players on the map, still has AI that loads in as players, replacing those players. So that you still kind of have that idea of like, okay, here's how the AI behaves, and then this is how players behave. So they try to mimic it. So meaning that you can't get juiced up and just, sweat out hours of PvE and then jump into PvP and be like, cool, I got the best gun, I got the best armor, I got the best streaks. And
yeah, this is exactly what I was saying. I was gonna that is immediately what I was gonna say. I'm like, they can't make a PvE mode and then there's no risk to it, and then go ahead and use that risk, all the stuff that you barely had to do anything to do, and go into PvP. There should be restrictions. There should be challenges. Like, PvE should be challenging. And I also think PvP should be challenging. But there should be levels of that in general. And I think PvE, if you're going to do PvE alone in a non-PvP lobby, if they decide to do the mode, it should have less amount of loot. Like I said, I think they need to do restrictions to where it makes it to where PvP still has the better loot and chances and risk to it.
Weapon, that's not how it works. I have all my skill points juiced out and I saved up this huge inventory. It doesn't work that way. Completely separate ecosystems. When Tarkov first came out, and why I bring this up is Tarkov initially said that they never would support a dedicated PvE mode, or they never envisioned that would be the case. That was the philosophy.
Okay.
Player interaction is what makes extraction shooters special, is what they said, which is 100% true, because they're not wrong on that. Tension of another player potentially being around the corner or anywhere you go on the map does add that layer of tension.
Facts.
But despite that thought process, they launched the PvE mode anyway, and they've maintained it because there's clearly a demand for it. And I think there's a lot.
Yeah, I think like Tarkov, they made the point of actually doing that because of what's going on in just extraction shooters. I think extraction shooters is a very niche genre, And people are realizing this. Like Marathon, for example, like I don't know, and I'll say that is on this hill. Like Destiny was their breadwinner, and they decided to go on a niche game and expecting to have hundreds to 200,000 people, like at concurrent, like thinking they're Arc Raiders. Arc Raiders had an ability, like they had a system where if you don't shoot nobody for a while, you get into these lobbies where everybody's kind of pretty much doing their own thing, doing a bunch of quests, doing their looting and stuff like that, and just getting out and chilling, not trying to kill anybody. But like there's also the PvP side of things. If you're going in and just killing people, you're going to start getting into those lobbies a lot more. There's an ability, there was a big PvE community in Arc Raiders, and it made people enjoy Arc Raiders for the way it is there. But at the same time, it was a clash. And like it wasn't that big of a deal that I noticed, because it was a lot easier to get gear and resources in Arc Raiders regardless, because of how they did it and how they structured it. So it was a little different, but I feel like the PvE community was big, and so was PvP, and that's why it was so popular, because it kind of fit and helped both sides of the coin. And I think Tarkov and Marathon focus way too much on PvP, which I also, when I played Marathon, I felt like the mobs and the AI were a little bit challenging at times, depending on where the areas you're at, but at the same time, there were not unique enough and differences to the actual AI. The last time I played was season 1, so I'm not exactly sure like how much they changed throughout the time, but I felt like during that time they didn't really add a lot of AI that were differences and things of that nature to really me feel like there was big challenges between the characters and the AI itself. So like that's why I say like having a PvE mode for people, especially how they did it with Tarkov. He was saying that it had different stash, different looting system and stuff like that outside of the actual PvP side. So it actually had different looting system or the different stash than the actual PvP side. So you couldn't use PvE in PvP loot, the differences, which I do think that's a good idea the way they did it. But I'm wondering how DMZ, if they do decide to do a PvE mode, how are they going to do this?
Benefits to a PvE mode that people don't acknowledge. And it looks like what they learned is there's a large audience of people interested in extraction shooters without that part of the gameplay.
The big risk.
Players. You can still mimic the intensity to a certain extent, and I think they've managed to do that.
But I feel like this might be a crazy hot take, but I think people like looter shooters with risk involved. That is generally my opinion. I feel like that genre has not been hit on that head yet. I think there's a lot of people that love PvP extraction shooters, but it's still very niche. But I feel like there's a broader audience where there's an extraction shooter, but it's more looter shooter based, that it has high risk, high reward, but it's PvP or PvE mode, or like mode intensive and focused with like a storyline and stuff of that nature. That, in my opinion, sounds more fun. And it's starting to show its color now. More and more people are coming into the genre of extraction shooters and learning. I would rather play the PvE mode more often than I would play PvP in the extraction mode. And I feel like no one has tapped into that to the very extent. And like, I think from a Bungie perspective, which I'm annoyed with Marathon and I love Destiny so fucking much, seeing what's happening. But I felt like if they just decided to do a PvP mode first outside the PvP, I would really think they would have way more players right now. Just my opinion.
If adding a PvE mode didn't just kill off the most hardcore extraction shooters on the market, I don't think it would automatically kill DMZ either. That brings us to the real problem of a PvE mode, and that's if you do shared progression. If you're allowing players to farm easier, like bosses easier, without the threat of another player just coming in and ruining that kill, that kind of defeats that purpose. If you allow them to earn the rare gear and use it in a PvP setting against other players, allow them to generate large pools of wealth, unlock all their upgrades, it just doesn't work. That's what destroys the mode, and how they've managed to do it versus how I think most people envision it is, I think a lot of people just think of it like a casual Warzone, which is just another playlist in the mode. All your progression counts, all the kills count, all your camos count. Everything you do in that mode literally counts. And people are viewing it that way when it needs to be a completely separate mode. And there's other differentiators that we'll also talk about that I think they do it pretty well. So if DMZ did it, they could do a separate stash, separate inventory, separate progression, separate economy that are completely separate. And it'll allow players to funnel in from a PvE mode into the PvP mode, because players enjoy the other 99% of the extraction shooter outside of the PvP element.
Yes, like that, I agree. If they do it that way, that would be good. That would be great. But I feel like with how Call of Duty is, they're not going to add that big depth of the mode. I hope they do. I personally think I do, but I feel like the most reasonable thing I think they would probably do is make XP, make the loot rarities for everything on the PvE side and the loot rarities and the amount of loot in the map way less. Like what drops with the bosses is going to be way less than what PvP would be. Like it would make it like, I feel like that would probably be the easiest way they can do it. But I do agree with JGOD here. I think if they do their separate stash, a lot of like the camos and stuff like that, I'm kind of a little different. I really don't care which mode you do to get the camos. But I know a lot of people might say that's like annoying and stupid. Like same thing people would do how they did zombies was they did a certain way and they had a certain spot and they would just farm it over and over. And I felt like with DMZ is, it's more PvP or PvE focused, so I understand that maybe even camo grinding it would take more, so that I would think in the PvE mode as well I would have a separate progression for PvE. If you decide to do the PvE mode through there and not PvP to grind the camos, it should take more kills, more things to get those camos. That's generally my opinion.
They enjoy questing, looting, collections, boss hunting, long-term progression. And it's not like Tarkov created the PvE community. They were already there, just not being serviced.
Yeah.
They weren't playing their PvP game. Maybe some of them, sure, will go like, you know what, I don't have a lot of time right now. I'm not going to play at the new wipe. I'm going to play my eternal character and I'm just going to progress through that. And it allows them to just play at their own pace and engage with the game. And eventually might even be encouraged to jump into the PvP version of the game because they have other distinctions, like content doesn't come out newest to the PvE mode. It doesn't. They get it later.
Yeah, like I do, like there's an incentive like to have the PvP mode have certain things that the PvE mode doesn't, and it gives people an incentive to go play PvP and try these modes out, try different areas of the maps or new maps in general, and just have different gear that is particularly to PvP to where you have to go in there to obtain that. And that's would also be a good difference to the PvE, to the PvP mode.
So how I would imagine this for DMZ is it launches in its normal PvP state, like we expect it to do.
Yeah.
And then when season 1 hits, they drop the PvE mode, which will be like the base version of the game without the new content, and you'll be like on a previous version of the game. And then if you decide, you know what, season 2's rolling around, I'm actually interested in some of that content, let me jump in day 1, and now you're in the PvP mode. So addressing one of the biggest concerns is it fractures the player base. And I've already touched on some of these talking points, but many of those players would have just quit the game. There's players who would have never tried the game.
Yeah, true.
There's people that are out there looking for co-op gameplay with their friends as a casual experience, would not have played it.
Like, yeah, I truly believe this. I feel like Destiny, Warframe, a lot of MMOs, I feel like that co-op multiplayer experience is a lot more casual and a lot more fun, and it can be also very challenging. Like Destiny, at some point, sometimes it like there's a lot of puzzles, there's a lot of things to learn, there's a lot of builds to make, and a lot of things like that. And I love Destiny for that. And like there's a PvP community in Destiny, but the PvE is so much, I feel like, stronger from a content perspective. And literally more and more people play Destiny for the PvE, and it shows a lot, but there's a very popular area in Destiny for the PvP side. But I feel like a lot more people want to come home, and just shoot bots or shoot AI and like play and stuff like that and build a character up, loot stuff. Like that's why I love looter shooters so much. Division, Warframe, Destiny, those games and like MMOs. Like if you guys remember like Wizard 101, I love that fucking game as a kid and like love to get and upgrade gear, make my like character look cool as fuck. Like I find that so fun. And with DMZ and extraction shooters, there's a very big risk. But like I think what they miss is a lot more people outside of a niche. Is PvE would gravitate so many people into the genre to like find it okay. Like this is a little more twist to the looter shooter genre. It's like an extraction shooter, but looter shooter genre at the same time. Kind of like in a way where like loot and you getting out matters, but you're not like constantly playing with players, you're playing with AI. And obviously could be very fucking challenging depending on the boss and the situation you're in. And it just feels like that, but with a little bit more of a risk.
Many older casual gamers just wouldn't have touched it. And players that were maybe interested in the idea of the progression, but aren't really all that competitive, wouldn't have touched the game.
Yeah.
And these are being funneled in and being supported in a way that they basically didn't have a way to exist. So suddenly, instead of what a lot of people think are just stealing from the PvP player pool, it's adding to the overall net number of players.
Like I think like yeah like I don't think it's stealing the PvP guys at all unless you're like unless they literally have shield progression and then you know the mid-maxers or the meta guys are going to make content and say, hey, this is the best way to loot this in DMZ. And you're going to start seeing people funnel into PvE to do that outside of PvP. Then that becomes the risk is over for DMZ. But if they make it to where they do it right and it makes sense, I think the PvP guys are going to play PvP and the people that are borderline want to switch back and forth from time to time from PvE to PvP. I think there's going to be more people playing DMZ because there's a PvE mode.
And many players will funnel towards that mode.
Yeah.
That wouldn't have been in the game in general.
Facts. 100%.
And then a percentage of them will funnel to the PvP experience for a plethora of reasons, whether it's the content, maybe they feel a little bit more comfortable, maybe they like the gameplay loop more than they thought, and it actually fosters like a healthy like player base to continue to grow and have an area to get experience to the game. This is one of those things that casual ended up supporting for Warzone, even though I don't like the way it was executed. There's other things that have been done in Fortnite
100%.
that kind of supplemented this. Arc Raiders experimenting with some stuff. Marathon experimenting with some stuff. And it seems like there's a thought process around it that there's an actual like fulfillment there, because over time your player base can just get smaller. Because if you're telling somebody who doesn't really want PvP, they run into a cheater for the first time, they're like, screw this game. Instead of going to the PvE mode, they just stop playing your game entirely. Maybe
fucking facts. With Call of Duty, with Tarkov, with like, I haven't heard a lot about Hackers and Marathon. I haven't been paying attention much, but like any game that is going to be a competitive shooter are going to have cheaters, and especially in extraction shooters. And the way Arc Raiders kind of did it, I kind of was frustrated with their like 3-time system. If they're hacking, get them the fuck out of there. Like my personal fucking opinion. Like it is very annoying because this game is high risk, high reward. You lose stuff, you don't get it back. If I'm dying from a cheater, sorry, not teacher. If I'm dying from a cheater, I am very much frustrated and I don't want to play the game. Like I'm just, what's the point when you're like, especially Arc Raiders, that give them chances. Like give that individual a chance after cheating. Like I don't know if they've changed it over time, but I remember when they made that announcement and talked about how they were doing the system, I was very infuriated on that because me and my friend had a couple fucking cheaters. They were in our game and we got our stuff back, but a couple days later we were just annoyed, and I was so infuriated by this shit, and I'm like, bro, extraction shooters cannot have these cheaters this bad, because Warzone, there's nothing outside the win or the moment of those cheating, that is going to affect you. But the overall affection of a extraction shooter, and there's cheaters, there's so much risk of going in now. It's like, what's the point? And I understanding having the PvE mode, literally for those people that don't want to worry about that, and want to play the mode and love the loop of the DMZ mode, I think it's just overall, my opinion, would do so well. And I know a lot of people saying PvP, like extraction shooter, should not be a PvE mode. It should have high risk, high reward, and stuff like that. It should the PvP extraction shooter. That's what extraction shooter is. And I feel like this is why games die. This is why companies die. This is why, because they don't listen to more of the casual fan base. And I know people are gonna fucking have this skill issue mindset, but I think you have to realize from a casual standpoint that the PvE mode will have more people playing, have more fun, and not worrying about constantly fucking sweating. And like, I understand, if you play zombies, there's a big community in Call of Duty and zombies, and it's not the fucking hardest thing in the world to play. It's literally bots. And like, that's why I've said for years, bro, like, marketing matters, especially, and if they do this correctly, they're gonna have a lot of people on DMZ 100%.
They stay playing the PvE, the anti-cheat gets an update, and the word on the street is like, ooh, it's way better. Maybe they'll jump back into PvP. So there's different systems there that it's going to help that aspect of the game. The other part is Call of Duty has a big advantage that Tarkov never had. DMZ is going to have a big advantage that it has
Call of Duty.
The Call of Duty ecosystem. There's
100%.
people that are going to be playing multiplayer. There's people that play the campaign.
The
There's
Warzone.
people that were former Spec Ops people, or like enjoyed the raids in the previous game.
100%.
Warzone players, and they'll have this opportunity.
Like, they have more numbers. They are going to, like, without Tarkov is not going to even have or touch Call of Duty's numbers. But with DMZ, they already have like the Call of Duty brand to it. So a lot more people are going to try it and play it more than Tarkov, unfortunately. And that's what the biggest advantage DMZ has from a PvP. And if they do PvE, I think it's going to bring the zombie community in here a little bit. It's going to bring, like I said, the survival Spec Ops, the community from the Infinity Ward side. It is going to bring a big piece of that.
Opportunity where maybe they're like initially off the bat, they're not really interested in the PvP side of it. Maybe they'll give it a shot. But the reality is if that option was available, they would 100% try it, and then have the potential to funnel into the other player pool to kind of foster that community so that you have that. And personally, just from my personal experience, PvP, I think is much more fun when you're shooting people that want to PvP. Like, it's kind of like weird to even put a PvE player in the PvP mode where you just dumpster them because they don't even want a PvE. And that's kind of one of the problems I ran in with Arc Raiders, is if you remove those PvE-ish players from the player pool, then I would feel like more satisfied just PvPing, because it always felt...
Yeah, I do agree with that, actually. Like, I was kind of making a point where I was saying there's a community between the PvE and the PvP community, but they have a matchmaking to where, like, if you don't kill people, there's very less likely you're not going to kill people, or there's going to be less people actually going to betray you or actually kill you. Everybody's just trying to quest, stuff like that. But there are times where I decided, my uncle was playing Arc Raiders, and he was a very solo, dolo, PvE type of player, and I hopped in for the first time, not really thinking anything of it, because I was a constant PvP guy in Arc Raiders. I was doing less PvE. I would loot and stuff like that, but I would still, with my friend, play duels and do that often. And I noticed as soon as I started shooting at people, people are freaking out. And I can understand that perspective of doing PvP in a PvP inherent lobby at times, and it just doesn't feel rewarding because you're killing something that's not inherently trying to PvP. So I get that.
Like, oh, don't shoot. Oh, it's like that player doesn't even want to be in a PvP. Like, that doesn't feel rewarding at all or satisfying.
Yeah, agreed.
Get a kick out of like kicking a dog when they're down or whatever. Like,
yeah, there is a lot in Arc Raiders. Yeah, get shit on, buddy.
To me, I never enjoyed that aspect of the game.
Yeah, I get it.
So maybe I'm off on that end, but PvP, it would essentially be that training ground as well, where you can go in and maybe you're in the PvP side of it and you're enjoying that and you're like, dude, I don't really feel comfortable with this particular commander or lead or lieutenant or whatever the hell the game's going to offer. Maybe there's specific mechanics that are like death mechanics, like that we've seen in other games and Zombies is done, where like if you don't do this thing, you die and that's it. Like over, GG's.
Yeah.
Maybe people want to experiment with this. And we've seen this in ARPGs. This is like Diablo and also PoE.
Yeah.
Where people will go in and maybe they practice a specific boss because it has mechanics. I don't think COD's going to be that complicated in terms of mechanics, but maybe, maybe they will. And then
I hope.
Kind of play on your alternate character, get some reps in. So when you go in the real thing, you'll do the real thing, but there's also the threat of the PvP player there because you like that experience, but more as a training ground to get more comfortable with it and get used to the systems so that it doesn't feel like there's a huge skill disparity between you and the other PvP players as well. And
this might be a crazy take, but I think with DMZ, I think we should, like, when it comes to like bosses, this is like an idea I have, that we should have some type of zombie boss from previous games or previous Treyarch games or something like that that kind of fits like DMZ, but like more like chaotic. This might sound non-realistic or milsim, because I know a lot of Infinity Ward or Modern Warfare guys are gonna have a little different kick out of it, but I feel like having like a crazy boss that's not a juggernaut or something of that nature, have something like some character like from Zombies that's like a mini boss that like has some type of powers that you like have to fuck this guy up and will kill you from a certain pattern perspective. I feel like that would be fucking entertaining from a DMZ perspective, but at the same time, it's Infinity Ward and Modern Warfare is kind of more grounded aspects. So I don't think they'll ever add it, but I would love to see bosses with actual patterns, actual very big damaging points outside the juggernauts and those fucking characters. Those guys don't really scare me that much because they have like a simple, I'm going to fucking mow you down. There's not much really you have to do outside of that with those guys.
I think if IW eventually decided they want this to exist, I know they've already stated, hey, we're not going to do a PvE mode. Tarkov said the thing and they changed their mind on that. And Warzone, I don't think ever envisioned having a casual mode, but that got changed.
That got changed pretty quick.
If they ever do it, I think it needs to be clear that there's separate progression, separate stash, separate inventory, all those things. Long-term progression is going to be separate. If they decide to do wipes, which haven't been announced or fully like done away with, because I think initially when the DMZ beta came out, there wasn't supposed to be wipes, but then they ended up doing a wipe like after season 2 or something like that. I don't remember the exact timing, but they ended up doing it. So maybe the plans could change based off user feedback. I'm not 100% sure. And they could potentially just delay content the way I've said, where maybe like the same concept of directed in Zombies, they get the content a little bit later, and directed is basically kind of like a tutorialized version of the game to really funnel people into the bigger mode, because you want it to have the legs to stand, but we don't want to sacrifice the way the game's balanced for the PvP side of it just because there's a casual. And I think that's where casual Warzone messed up, is there's a lot of systems in place that just do not function well when you transfer over to the standard PvP, and the theory of it didn't translate well either. And
I do agree.
Back to my original thoughts is it's not really whether or not DMZ should have a PvE mode. I think it's, can DMZ support a PvE mode without compromising the PvPvE mode? And I think based on how Tarkov did it, it's possible. And not only possible, it's pretty straightforward. I don't know about the logistical side of what it would cost resources for IW to do it.
Yeah,
that's
true.
Hurdle.
Probably.
I think there's a lot of way more benefits to having the mode than drawbacks. And I think you got to be pretty confident in your mode's ability to stand on its own without PvP. Kind of reiterating what I said also earlier, that if it can't stand on its own and PvP isn't the enhancer, then there's fundamentally something wrong with your game. And Tarkov has demonstrated this well, at least in my opinion. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. We'll see you on the next one.
See, like, yeah, that's exactly what I mean. Like, what he said, I completely agree. I do like his point with stash and how they should fundamentally separate the PvE in the PvP mode itself, or the PvEvP mode by itself. I do get that. That is 100%. I also think they should, if from a resource perspective, I do understand that, but at the same time, resource, really, Activision, Infinity Ward, like when it comes to resources and money, they're very different individuals, so I don't really have, I have a little different opinion on that when they talk about it. But if they want to do it less, I think they just change modifiers, or like do simplistic different changes from an XP rarity perspective from bosses and enemies and stuff like that, and XP and less things matter. It would take more time to get more things, and have restrictions on higher rated loot outside of PvE. Like PvE, you can't get the highest rated loot. You have to go into PvP. And I would 100% agree with that. Like if they decide to do it that way, that's another good way to do that mode. And what I heard by JGOD and what he said about if the PvE mode or the PvE side of this mode is inherently not that good and PvP is carrying it, is something's fundamentally wrong with the game. And I do agree it should stand on its own. If some people want to do PvE and enjoy the PvE mode and have it actually challenging, it should also stand on its own. Even in the PvP mode itself, the PvEvE mode should have both legs to stand on. PvP should be enhancer to the PvP as well as it. And I 100% hopefully down the road we do get a mode for this, because I'm very excited for DMZ. I really want to see it succeed, and them saying that they're fully into this. They actually have healing systems. They actually have certain things that I've seen and what I've heard. The bounty system is very interesting from a PvP perspective, and that sounds so much fun from my perspective. If like, oh, there's a guy in this lobby that's been killing so many people, I want to be a bounty hunter. That's just like, oh, that is a cool perspective of DMZ. And having like a leaderboard, I'm like, oh, these are the highest rated guys getting the amount of kills. They're the most wanted, and this is the bounty hunters that have killed the most amount of money concurrently. That would just make it seem fucking like it has like a storyline base to it. Like, okay, this guy on YouTube on stream, like this is the bounty hunter, the best bounty hunter. He has the most kills killing bounty hunters. And then there's like, this is the craziest, most wanted player in DMZ. Like it gives like an incentive to go after these guys if they're in the lobby. And it should like have like a really cool system, and like that's fun. But I also think the PvE mode should have something very intriguing, exciting about it, and not just have lazy like AI and juggernauts in the game. They are having tanks, they are having vehicles and stuff of that nature, and helicopters, hopefully in AI. To that extent. So there is some of that, but I still think there should be more AI characters in the game, and I'm hoping that's the case. We don't know a lot about what we're going to see from a character AI perspective, but we did see the Juggernaut. But I feel like the Juggernaut should not be the only big boy in there. They should have some cool bosses to go after. Like they should have like a crazy looking like mansion cap like area where it's like a red bar and you have to go after this boss in this area, and it's actually a cool boss to go after or something like that. Have some like voice lines, have like a little bit of a story out of it, you know what I mean? If you want to bring like characters from the campaign as like mini bosses in DMZ, do it. Like I would agree doing that. That just sounds cool, you know what I mean? And I would like to see that. So I'm very curious on what you guys think in the comment section down below. As always, guys, this is Lanes. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.